Okay, I've got some bones for everybody to look at. On this side, I have a older Mustang that passed away recently. He was 20-something, and he died of natural causes. As far as I know, he was never shod, but during the last, say, year of his life, his owner had some serious health issues. She was also the trimmer, so maybe in the last year of his life, he didn't get trimmed as frequently as he probably should have, but other than that, he's had a good care his whole life, okay? On the right, we have a horse that was shod. I don't know anything else about it at this point, and we'll take a look at that as well. So first, let's talk about the Mustang bone. So I was surprised when I processed this foot to see what good condition this bone was in. It's because it's an older horse, I expected it to have, some pathology, but it actually looks pretty good. It's actually pretty smooth, so it doesn't have too much porosity. It does a little bit back here in the palmar process, which is pretty common. Some bony proliferation here, but overall, it's in pretty good shape. This is a hind foot, so it doesn't really have a ski tip. If we take a measurement, Dr. Bowker tells us that on average size horses, semi-lunar line to tip of the coffin bone should be 30 millimeters. This is the semi-lunar line here, where the DDFT inserts into P3. Okay, the impar ligament inserts back here, and that holds the navicular bone in place. So if we look at and we measure semi-lunar line to tip of P3, we've got exactly 30 millimeters. So I thought that was pretty cool. If we look at this bone and the navicular bone at the same time, one thing I noticed was that on the lateral side of the hind foot, I see this bony proliferation here, this bony buildup, if you will. And then I noticed this notched area of the navicular bone. When I first pulled this bone out of my pot from processing, I thought maybe I chipped it or something, but no, it matched up with this proliferation here, so that must be the clearance that it had to make because of this bony protuberance here. And that would be the lateral side of the foot. So if we look at the hoof, now there's no saying, that this hoof always looked like this on the outside. Like I said, it's the last year of his life. He probably didn't get as adequate care as he could have. He was running loose on about 15 acres. So what do we see here? We see a pretty severely underrun heel. So the load point of the heel is way in the middle of the foot. It should be back here. And this angle here should really be standing up more like that. Okay, so these heels are crushed and pulled forward because that toe got so long. So the lamina, or the tubules of the hoof wall, are actually laying almost horizontal, okay? And remember that when we process these feet, they dry out and shrink, so any pathology we see here is probably going to be exaggerated. So we've got some long hoof walls, we've got a long toe. I measured it, it's about 50 millimeters from apex of the frog to the end of the toe. But we're at 30 millimeters right about in here. So if we were to trim this foot, we could easily trim it, just take the wall off, and he'd be maybe at 35 millimeters, and then give him a bevel to bring his brake gopher back behind the 30 millimeter mark, and we'd be good to go. Because that toe got so long, the frog contracted pretty badly back here. But the frog itself doesn't look too stretched out. It is contracted, but it doesn't look super long. So that's what is another thing that makes me think that this foot wasn't in this condition for too long, okay? Now these heels got so tall that they crushed under, and when they folded, they made this fold over here on the side of the foot, okay? So since this is his right hind, this is the lateral side of the foot. So this coffin bone would be in there. I can't get it in there because this has shrunk, but it would sit in there right on top of these commissures, okay? Now, we talk about, if we look inside this hoof capsule, of course, we can see the lamina in there that hold the hoof capsule to the coffin bone. We see this frog stay. Now, The frog stay, it kind of looks like a shark fin, and the purpose of the frog stay is with the digital cushion all back in here, which is made up of fibrous ligaments, they all kind of anchor into this thing like a mast. So when this foot hits the ground and it wants to spread out a little bit, those ligaments will check it and hold it in place. The foot still expands a little bit, drawing blood into the foot, but the foot doesn't, implode upon impact or anything. So the frog spine is very, very critical for holding that foot together and helping to dissipate the strain and stress on the foot and the shock and vibration. Okay. When the heel starts to contract, it narrows this frog spine, pushing it up and tipping it back this way, so it's not really oriented correctly, and it can't do as good a job as keeping those ligaments in place as it could if this foot were correctly trimmed. So all important things to consider: functional anatomy, keep your heels back to the widest part of the frog if you can, keep your walls trimmed down so that the horse is sole loading and loading his frog, so on and so forth. So yeah, and so with this foot getting crushed under, we can see kind of a convex shape to this dorsal wall of the hoof wall, indicating that if this foot wasn't already negative plantar angle, it's probably going to get there. So some interesting things about that foot. Then if we look at this shod foot with toe clips, we can see here this horse isn't really much better off. So we can see the tubules here running at a very low angle. These should be standing up more along in alignment with the bony column. This angle back here should be very close to this angle up here. The toe's too long. The toe's very, very long. So if we look at this toe with the shoe, we're at about 40 millimeters. Okay, so what else? The sole has been paired, typical farrier trim where the sole's been paired. The frog has been paired. We've got some thrush here in the central sulcus, which actually has made a hole that comes through the frog. And look at that frog spine. It's almost non-existent because that thrush has eaten it away. So without this intact, it can't, we've lost the integrity back in the bottom of the foot, in the back of the foot. The horse is completely loading the shoes anyway, so if you took the shoe off and wanted to get this horse barefoot, he's going to take some time to rehabilitate him, clear up the thrush, get the back of the foot healthy enough for him to be comfortable to load it, and start rebuilding that digital cushion, okay? If we look at this coffin bone, because of the peripheral loading, we've got a very raggedy edge, okay, to this coffin bone. So when you load the coffin bone peripherally, we've loaded the weakest, thinnest part of it, and it just pulls at these edges. So that force just pulls at these edges. It continues to pull them out. So the foot will lay down more bone here, and it can't lay it down fast enough, and it doesn't have enough calcium perhaps, so it's all jagged and raggedy and therefore very weak. We also see a lot of big holes here other than the vascular channels, especially back here in the palmar process. So this is the part of the foot he's landing more on. It's back in here, okay? So this is going to take the brunt of the shock and vibration, and we can see how moth-eaten that looks. We can really see some big holes back in here. So this would be, let's see. Does this tell me if it's a right or a left? I'm going to guess that this is a right foot. So, yeah, so when we load peripherally and we've got a long toe and we've got way underrun heels, instead of some of the load going up through the bony column, which is really what we want, this is the densest and thickest part of the bone. We want that load to come straight up through the bony column. Instead, that load some has moved forward, and so it's not in an ideal place. It's going to strain that DDFT. It's going to put a lot of strain on the front of the foot. And, eventually these horses have navicular syndrome, navicular symptoms, navicular pain. He's got terrible thrush, so again, if we took that shoe off, he probably couldn't make heel first landings. So just something to look at when we are trying to trim a foot and we're trying to get those heel first landings. It's not just something we think is pretty. It's needed for the functional aspect of the foot. All right, now I know this goes in here. It's pretty tight. And what I want to show here for anyone that hasn't already seen it is how that coffin bone sits on the roof of the commissure, okay? Now, obviously in life there's some soft tissue in there, but not much. It sits really just millimeters above that, the roof of the commissures, all right? So these do support the coffin bone. They help to support it. Not the only support, but they help to support it. All right, so I'm just going to leave it there for now rather than fight with it. We look at the navicular bone. It's got some rough edges. We can feel it, but it's a big navicular bone, much bigger than our average size horse, obviously. So this is the way it's oriented in the foot. So that's that navicular bone, and that's going to be in there like this, okay? And the DDFT comes down and runs right underneath that and inserts into P3. All right. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned and we'll find another interesting bone soon.